What really happened when Malcolm Jamal Warner's family says his death wasn't just a tragic accident? At first, it seemed like a heartbreaking but straightforward tragedy. A beloved actor lost to the ocean during a family vacation in Costa Rica. A dangerous current, a frantic rescue attempt, and a man known to millions as Theo Huxtable was suddenly gone. But behind the initial headlines and official statements, there's something that doesn't quite add up. His family's silence has only deepened the mystery. And while the authorities were quick to label it an accident, those closest to him aren't so sure. Quiet whisperings have begun circulating. Whispers about inconsistencies, conflicting reports, and details that were almost immediately walked back. Was it really just a freak accident? Or is there more to the story than we've been told? The deeper you look, the more questions you find. And what happened in those final moments before Warner was pulled under might not be as simple or as accidental as it first appeared. July 20th, 2025. What was supposed to be a peaceful family getaway turned into a nightmare that would shake fans and loved ones around the world. Malcolm Jamal Warner was on vacation with his family in Costa Rica, enjoying the sun, the waves, and a rare moment away from the spotlight. They had chosen Playa Clis, known for its stunning shoreline, but also infamous among locals for its unpredictable rip currents. Witnesses say Warner had been playing in the water with his young daughter when things took a sudden and terrifying turn. Reports spread quickly, claiming that both father and daughter had been swept out to sea. The idea of a parent risking his life to save his child pulled at everyone's emotions. But later, the local police corrected that version of events. Warner's daughter had not entered the deep water. She was close to shore, safe, thankfully, while Warner had ventured further out alone. That's when the rip current hit. Powerful and fast-moving, the current dragged him under before anyone could reach him. Bystanders, including trained medical professionals, rushed in to help. CPR was administered for over 40 minutes. The effort was intense, desperate, but ultimately, it wasn't enough. The official cause of death was listed as asphyxia by submersion, drowning. But even in those early reports, the story didn't sit right with everyone. And as more details began to surface, the sense that something was off only grew stronger. The beach that day was deceptively calm at first, but beneath the surface, the waves were hiding something deadly. Playa Clis has long been known for its treacherous undercurrents, especially dangerous to visitors unfamiliar with the way the ocean shifts without warning. And on July 20th, it took less than a minute for things to spiral out of control. When Warner was pulled under, there were no lifeguards on duty. The lack of trained emergency personnel sparked confusion and panic. Tourists nearby tried to react, but it was a doctor visiting from Europe who stepped in first. He later described the scene as chaotic and horrifying. The waves were aggressive, visibility was poor, and by the time Warner was dragged back to shore, he had already been under for far too long. What followed was nearly an hour of desperate attempts to revive him. Multiple people, including doctors vacationing nearby, took turns performing CPR. Emergency calls were made, but response times were slow, and professional help arrived too late. The doctor on scene later said Warner had no pulse when he was pulled from the water, but they kept trying anyway. There was a sense of disbelief, like they were refusing to accept what was happening. The ocean had taken him, but they weren't ready to let go. The efforts were heroic, but ultimately unsuccessful. And yet, the question lingered. How could someone surrounded by people, including medical professionals, in broad daylight, just vanish under the water like that? And why, on one of Costa Rica's most dangerous beaches, were there no lifeguards anywhere to be seen? The family's silence following these events only made the questions louder. In the days following Warner's death, something unusual happened. His family said almost nothing. There was no press conference, no heartfelt social media post, no official statement expressing grief or even confirming the events. For a man who had spent his entire life in front of the camera, the silence felt deafening. And in that silence, speculation started to build. Early reports painted a vivid and tragic picture. Warner and his daughter, both swept out by the same deadly current. But within 48 hours, that version began to fall apart. Costa Rican authorities released a clarification. Warner's daughter had never been in the danger zone. She was near the shoreline, unharmed. Warner had entered deeper waters on his own before the rip current pulled him under. That revision wasn't just a correction, it completely shifted the narrative. Now people weren't just mourning, They were asking questions. Why did initial reports mention his daughter being in danger? Who gave that information? And why did it take days for the record to be set straight? Behind the scenes, some close to the family hinted that Warner had been unusually stressed leading up to the trip. Others noted that he wasn't known to be reckless around the ocean and wasn't a stranger to physical fitness. The idea that he would suddenly make a careless decision didn't sit right with those who knew him best. Still, the family remained quiet. No rebuttals, no elaborations, just silence. And in that silence, the idea that this was more than just an accident began to grow. Quietly, uneasily, but persistently. Long before headlines questioned the nature of his death, Malcolm Jamal Warner had already secured his place in entertainment history. To millions, he was Theo Huxtable, the wisecracking, sharp-eyed middle child from The Cosby Show. But Warner refused to be defined by a single role. Over 4 decades, he carved out a career that was deliberate, layered, and quietly revolutionary. From starring in sitcoms like Malcolm and Eddie to dramatic turns in The Resident and Suits, Warner showed the kind of range that's rare in any industry. He was an actor, a poet, a musician, and in 2015, a Grammy winner, recognized for his powerful performance on Jesus Children alongside Robert Glasper and Lala Hathaway. In June 2024, he launched a podcast called Not All Hood, offering raw, honest conversations about the Black experience in America. It wasn't about fame or publicity. It was about legacy, and Warner was building one rooted in truth. That's what made the news of his death hit so hard. And it's why the tributes weren't just routine fare. They were personal, emotional, sometimes even haunting. Bill Cosby, now rarely seen in public, spoke through tears, comparing the loss of Warner to the death of his own son, Ennis. This one cuts deep, he said. Tracy Ellis Ross called Warner a quiet giant. Viola Davis praised his grace. Jamie Foxx wrote, "A brother, a soul, gone too soon." Angela Bassett, Jeffrey Owens, and countless others echoed the same theme. Malcolm Jamal Warner wasn't just a talented man, he was a kind one. His death created a vacuum that no one seemed ready for. It wasn't just the loss of a familiar face. It was the feeling that something steady and good had been ripped away too soon. But as the tributes poured in, they also served as reminders. Warner's influence stretched far beyond the screen, and for many, that made the circumstances of his passing even harder to accept. As the days passed and official details remained scarce, the internet filled in the gaps with rumors, whispers, and theories that grew louder by the hour. Some pointed to the strange silence from Warner's family. Not a single detailed post, not even a formal statement. To many, it felt more like avoidance than mourning. That quiet left room for questions. Was there something they weren't ready to reveal? Or something they were deliberately withholding? A few unconfirmed posts claimed there had been growing tension within the family in the months leading up to the trip. Others suggested Warner had been dealing with a private medical issue, something he hadn't shared publicly. One comment that gained traction online even hinted that Warner hadn't been himself lately, quoting an anonymous friend who claimed he'd been unusually withdrawn and carrying a lot emotionally. Then came the spotlight on Playa Cocali's itself. Multiple travel forums and former visitors noted how dangerous the beach is, especially for tourists. Some asked why a resort would send guests into water without warning them. Others questioned why there were no lifeguards on duty at all, despite the beach's reputation for deadly rip currents. Was this just a tragic oversight, or a failure in safety that turned fatal? And yet, through all of this, the Warner family remained quiet. No lawsuits, no blame. Just a soft, persistent silence that, ironically, spoke louder than words. People close to the situation have said that the family doesn't believe the full truth has come out. But no one has gone on record. No one has named names. Instead, the message is subtle, hidden between the lines, just enough to stir unease without ever fully confirming what they really believe. Whatever happened in those final moments at Playa Cocali, the Warner family seems to know more than they're saying, and they may never say it out loud. Malcolm Jamal Warner's death was ruled an accident, a tragic drowning caused by nature's brute force and a moment of vulnerability on a dangerous beach. On paper, it all adds up. A rip current, no lifeguards, and a rescue effort that came just a little too late. But as the official story settled, it didn't bring closure. If anything, it opened the door to even more questions. Why were early reports so conflicting? Why did police need to correct basic facts days later? Why hasn't the family spoken directly? choosing instead to let quiet corrections and private grief speak for them. This wasn't just the passing of a celebrity, it was the loss of a man deeply respected in Hollywood, admired for his talent, and loved for his humility. A man whose life had always been so visible, suddenly gone in a moment so clouded. And maybe we'll never know what really happened that day on the water. But in the silence his family maintains, something remains just out of reach. Did tragedy hide something more?